You happy to be on camera today? How is everybody doing? Yeah? Yeah, you're doing good? Okay. Happy Sunday afternoon to all. And hopefully you can all hear us just fine. Yeah. As we can tell, Opie is very happy to be on camera. Yeah. And he's been waiting very patiently for this live stream to begin. And cat hair galore. Wow. Hang on a moment. That's pretty bad. Kitty, you need to you need to brush off that cat hair. Wow. That's quite an entrance into the live stream there. All right, so how is everybody doing? And hopefully we have some questions come in here as we get started. Hopefully you're having a peaceful, enjoyable Sunday afternoon. And just thought I'd pop on a little bit while I had some extra time on the weekend and see how everybody was doing. Haven't done a live stream in a couple weeks, so just thought that cat hair still all over the place. Just thought that we might chat it up for an hour or so. And if you have any questions, hit them up in the chat section, and I'll try to answer them as best as possible. And then if you want to do any sort of other donations or subscriptions or anything, there's links available for that as well. So just make yourself at home here in the chat, and let's have a fun time together. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Haven't gotten any comments yet that I've seen, so give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video also if you're enjoying. And if you could say something in the chat just to let me know that the microphone's working, that I'm not just talking to myself, that would be awesome. I have a green light, so usually that means everything's good to go. So I don't know if you can see it very well on camera, but right here, we've got a very interesting little headphone. I'm not sure I'm going to do a full review on it, but might talk about it a little bit here in the stream. And this is the COS KPH 40i. And very, very unique. Reminds me a lot of high school for me. You get your little Walkman, your little tape deck, or if you got the early renditions of CD players, portable CD players, you would get a headphone, something similar to this. And that's kind of what it reminds me of build wise. Extremely light, definitely an on ear, but they're fun. They're definitely fun, and they have pretty decent sound. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Nice thing about them, which is a nice touch from COS, is they actually have a detachable cable. So if you want to put a longer cable on it, you can. That's a nice touch. Now, it doesn't have a microphone, which is interesting. I think you can get a version with a microphone. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe you can get a microphone version as well. The pads probably could be rolled. These, pretty typical of this style, very shallow and thin feeling. You could probably mess around with some sort of a mod, putting a different pad on. That would probably work as well. But I don't really have a problem with it, considering that these are not going to be anything that's used as like a reference or for real long lengthy times. This is just something you're up on your head when you need a portable sound. I do wish that they had put a little bit of padding, like right here on the top, just a little piece of like thin rubber or something that would help, because that little metal ring does kind of press down a little bit there on the top of your head. So like they have this little bit of like a rubber slider where the sliders go. If they had taken that piece and just put it like right here, that might help with that comfort problem. KSC 75s would be better. Well, comfort wise, these are actually more comfortable than the KSC 75s, in my opinion. But the sound wise is where you would probably be more interested. And these are an interesting sound, actually. They're kind of, to me, kind of like a mixture between a KSC 75 and a KPH 30i, and a Porter Pro. It's kind of like a little bit of the best of all of them, type of sound. I like it, actually. It's an interesting type of sound here. So like I have, the KSC 75s here, and the way that this part works and goes around your ear, this part's a little thicker, and so they're not quite as comfortable in that way. Sound wise, they're kind of as I said, mixture between all the causes. Cable, this one does have a microphone, which makes it nicer for portable. Well, overall, yeah, these are really cool, especially with that detachable cable, and the sound being slightly warm, pretty well extended. I mean, you get there is no blockage whatsoever of outside noises. So very, very wide and open soundstage. Does a pretty good job with detail retrieval, resolution, and depth and layering is okay. And tone and timbre is kind of where these excel. They do a good job sounding more natural and accurate. And so it's just kind of a mixture. You don't have that really big bloated bass on them, and you also don't have the more tipped high end like you do on some of the other models. It's kind of a balance between them all. So yeah, it's an interesting little headphone that was it $40, and it'd probably be easy to mod. I'm not going to do that, as that's just not my type of thing. But doing the pad thing would probably be extremely easy to pull off and just put something different on, and you might be able to, get some comfort. But you really, I mean, if you want to rock a 1980s look, here you go. And it was pretty cool, pretty fun, a little headphone. And no offense, Opie, but I should have never picked you up before the live stream, because now I've got like hair floating around the office. It's driving me nuts. All right. Let's see what we got. Always up. Hi. David Blackman, good to have you here. Let's see. Depper, always good to see you. Farhand, Akhtar, those eyes are gorgeous. I'm assuming that you're referring to my eyes. Thank you very much. No, Opie's actually a very pretty cat. Let's see. And Farhan, I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Having a very good day. Thanks. Let's see, Depper. I've heard there's a closed back Sundar coming soon. A very, very interesting. Yes, actually, that is in the works. I really do want to hear one. Hope I get the opportunity to hear a Sundar closed. Very curious about it. Hi-Fi-Man hasn't done a lot of closed headphones, so this would be an interesting place for them to go, because most of their closebacks I've heard are kind of like, So hopefully the Sundara takes a good step for them and maybe opens a new door in their endeavors. Let's see what else we got. Mr. Steckling Schloss. Hello, everyone. Okay, Aurora Tree. Hey, Dave, I wonder what the purpose is of this live stream, or what direction this goes. Purpose of it is I just wanted to chat. Where does it go? That's up to you guys. What kind of questions do you ask? Let's see. always up. What's a good value in sounding USB audio streaming DAC? Let's see. A good value in sounding USB audio streamer DAC. Now, I'm not much into streaming. The ones that I have heard are rather expensive. So you're talking like Matrix, Elements, and things like that. If there's a cheaper one, I'm not familiar. Or are you just talking about something that you can stream music, like from Tidal off of the internet, or Qobuz or something like that, into it using USB? I'm just curious. But you could always go to my tier list, which I did post up on the top, and we can take a look over there, see what we have. Let's see. Of course, you have the IFI stuff. You have the Matrix stuff, the X Saber 3, and the Element. Those would be my official streamer reviews. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of limited in that. I'm more of just a straight up DAC guy. I'm kind of old school. All right, let's get back to some questions here. Let's see. I've ordered the Odyssey LCD X. I see the Audio Technica R70X is there. I have it too. How do they compare? LCD X versus R70X. Now, the LCD X21 is the version that I reviewed. I have heard the original at an audio show. R70X has a wider soundstage. It is a little bit more light sounding. It doesn't quite have the note weight of the LCD X21. And the 21 has a little bit better detail retrieval and resolution. Tone and timbre goes to R70X just slightly. Kitty, you don't need in that. No. It's trying to break into the cupboard. Anyway, so yeah, they're not really even remotely close as far as sound. It's kind of apples and an orange. LCDX is a little bit more defined and refined type of sound, whereas the R70X is bigger and just overall a softer approach to things. Okay, let's see. A Potion for Love is a very good Aurora track. Okay. Let's see. Nice list. Thank you. If you had a budget of $2,000, which one would you go for? Iems or headphones, closed or open back? And how much would you value the portability of Iems? Because in my opinion, I want to carry Iems that expensive outside, or I don't want to carry Iems that expensive outside. Okay. For $2,000, it's a good question. I would probably, because the headphone that I would want doesn't quite fit there unless I was able to get it used, and that would be the Roston Red Zero. Or IEM wise, $2,000, I can get the CTM DaVinci 10 or the ADV M5 1D. As far as using them portable, I really wouldn't use the more expensive stuff. I don't even to this day. When it comes to the expensive stuff, it normally stays here in the office. If I'm going to use it to do some live monitoring or something like that, I put it in a carrying case and take it there and then take them out. Don't really use them outside. So normally my more portable used IEMs or headphones are of the cheaper variety. That way, if I happen to drop them or they leave them, I'm not like really feeling the pain of Opie. That you need to take that. We have a cat tree in here, and it's got like levels that are kind of bi-level, so they can jump up. He tried to go from the floor all the way to the third tier. He made it, but barely. He had to pull himself up to it. It would have been a lot easier if he had just taken the steps like you're supposed to. Anyways, yeah. So that when it comes to portable use and IEMs, um, price does come into it for me when it comes to that. Closed back headphones as well, definitely. My closed back headphone of choice would be the Odyssey LCD2 closed or the Dan Clark Ether C. So neither one of those are going to be really walking around. If I'm going to use closed back headphones outdoors, it's going to probably be something noise canceling and something fairly cheap. All right. Aura Tree, I'm glad that you understood that answer. Thank you. $2,000. Would you prefer speakers? If so, which one? Sorry about the spamming. No, you're fine. You're not spamming. That's what a chat's for. $2,000. Definitely, you could do some speakers. Would that include the amplifier? So if I was going to include the amplifier, which would be a Shit Audio Vidar or a Topping LA90, either or, I would pair it with the speakers that are behind me, Martin Logan Motion 15s, probably the newer versions, even though I haven't heard them, just because these are the originals and they're hard to come by used. But that would get you right around the $2,000 mark. Great cat. There he is. Yeah. You're getting hair all over the office. Do you care about the hair in the office? No, you don't. Okay. All right, more hair to clean off. Okay, let's see. Hope you're doing great. I am, Pavin. Thank you very much. Have you heard any Kennerton headphones? Yes, actually, I have. I reviewed the Gallahorn on the channel. Very interesting design, very well built. And then if you consider it a Kennerton, I guess you can. The Opos Caspian is also made by Kennerton. So yeah, I've heard two Kennertons. Is the Truth Ear Zero coming your way? It is. In fact, both versions of it are coming my way, but they're lost in the mail. I have no idea when they're going to arrive. I just got notifications last week that they are traveling, and then I got notifications today that they are in transit with an unknown ETA. So whatever that means. Hopefully they show up, and hopefully they're in one piece. Let's see. Is the Hibby R2 DAP good to start off with? I don't know. I have no experience with that one. Looks really interesting, though. Make sure I didn't miss anything above that. Okay. I was wondering, what would you recommend? I'm looking for an over-ear, open or closed, with good extension into the sub bass, but I'm not a sub bass head necessarily. My budget is $250 to $350. Open or closed? I would go Hi-Fi Min Sundara. That's a very good starting point, especially if you have a decent amplifier. It'll get you started on the right way. You could also, I would just stick there. If you want to go super budget, you could do the Rode NTH 100s and then buy your amplifier because they're $150. But if you really want a good starting point, the Sundara is probably the place to go for your bass needs. Let's see. You should do a review of the Cayenne RU6 R2R portable deck. Synergy with the S12 is just fantastic, and I'm blown away. Okay, Pavin, thank you for the recommendation. If I can get one of those in, they do look really interesting. Some things are extremely hard for me to get. Some things are pricey. Some things are just not as obtainable at times, just because of either stock or locations where I am. But I will definitely look into that one. Speaking of, I'm going to park there just for a moment, and I'm not going to try to sound like I'm begging or pleading. Please don't take it that way. But if I do get a lot of requests and a lot of questions about when you're going to review this. Can you get this? Can you do this? And can you do this one? And yes, I can. But unfortunately, money doesn't grow on trees, and there is a lot of ways that will help to be able to bring in some of that gear um, by supporting the channel, either through YouTube memberships or Patreon. And any support is welcome and appreciated. And I am very open and honest about what what the monies would go towards, and that is for funding gear to review or funding gear as references. That's it. That's the only thing that the money gets used for, unless you specifically donate money and say, "Go do this, have fun, take your wife to Ruth Chris or whatever, however you want, whatever." If you specifically tell me to do something with the money, I will use it in that way. But anything that is just coming through Patreon, YouTube memberships, things like that, go directly back into the channel. Anyways, all right, that's done. But yes, there's a lot of recommendations for gear, and sometimes I can get it in, sometimes I can't, and things aren't always sent in on a timely basis. It can get frustrating as a reviewer. Okay, let's see. Farfan, you're very welcome. Thank you for the answer. Personally, I would go for the Hi-Fi Aria or a pair of Genelex or Neumann speakers with a subwoofer. Those I haven't heard Neumann speakers, but they do look very interesting. I heard Genelex at an audio show. I did really like those a lot, and the Aria is very good pairing as well, especially Aria Stealth. Let's see here. Can you rank these according to your personal preference and then by technicalities? Okay, so we got P1 Max, Kato, S12, Elixir, and T2. Let's do technicalities first. Technicalities, it would go S12, P1 Max, Kato, Elixir, T2. By personal preference, it would be P1 Max, Kato, S12, T2, and Elixir, but they're all really close. That's a tough question. If I had to pick one of those, it's going to depend. But more than likely, if I were to pick one of those, it's probably going to come down to Kato, P1 Max, S12, and then the others, it kind of get mingled in there. So, all right, very good question. All right, let's see. Is the Megatron enough power for the Sundara, or which one do you recommend? That is like one of those planars that it'll power and you'll get volume, but it's not optimal. So it's doable, but it's not the best. If you really want to do the planar headphones, especially like Sundaras and stuff, I recommend a desktop amplifier. And it could be something, you can't really see it on camera that way. There we go. As that one, which is the Drop THX 1 linear, which is, in my opinion, the best amplifier value under $200. You could also go with some of the offerings from Shit Audio or, any of those more budget friendly amplifiers have most of the power. Those portables and kind of semi desk portables like a Megatron don't have quite enough oomph. But if you are going to use a Megatron with a planar, it has to be out of the 4.4 balanced. Rob Hawk, thank you very much for the donation. Do greatly appreciate that. That's very much appreciated. All right, let's see here. I'd throw in the Head Audio Type 07s. That's an interesting suggestion as well. That I haven't heard that one, but it looks really cool. All right, let's see here. Have I heard the Blessing to Dusk or the Moondrop Variations? I have heard neither, and I so want to. I'm very curious about how the Dusk compares to the Blessing 2, which is one of my favorite Iems. Be very curious as to the differences. I know that one of the things that I did wish that the Blessing 2 had was a little bit more bass, and I know that the Dusk does have a little bit more bass and body. So that would be a very interesting comparison. And then the variations, everybody mentions that it's one of the more technical and balanced moon drops out there. I would just love to hear it, but I haven't had the opportunity at this time. But that may be coming. There's some talking going around with some people that may be willing to loan it. All right, let's see here. How many hours a day do you listen to music? Weekends is a lot more. I tend to listen probably on weekends somewhere between about 6 to 8 hours. During the week when I'm working, because I cannot use gear while I'm working, I have to use company provided gear, so I can't listen to music and stuff during that time. It kind of goes down to about probably 3 or 4 hours, maybe a little bit more, depending on how late I stay up or how early I get up in the morning. But usually it's somewhere in between about 3 to 6 hours a day, probably is my average. Let's see. Oops. I dipped my toes into speakers with a cheapy Pioneer bookshelf pair, and they sound good. If I sit in about 2 meter square, not so good for apartments with atypical shapes and fewer rooms. Yeah, that is one thing with speakers for sure. Some are worse at it than others. Well, I shouldn't say worse, or more particular about it than others, and that is placement. And things in the room can really affect that as well. But for the most part, you do need to have your seating position so that the speakers are angled and coming right across where they intersect. And that can be hard to do depending on your room settings and all the other things that are going on in your room, how much other things you have for dampening and things like that. Definitely, speakers are fun in that way. Let's see. Mr. Stacking Schloss, you're very welcome. See, Alan Robertson, S12 is just about bulletproof. My nephew ripped mine off and whipped them into a glass of water, and after drying them out, there was no ill effect. Wow. Thank you for doing the quality control test. That's incredible. They are pretty durable for sure. I don't recommend that most people dip their Iems in water, but thank you for adding that information. That's good to know for anybody who's a little curious. Yeah, you need to get your nephew into audio for sure. He's 1 year old, so he's a cute introvert torture tester. Yeah, they are cute at that age for sure. In fact, today when I was at church this morning, a friend of mine brought his son up, and I was sitting at the soundboard, and I was holding him, and he's 4 months old, and he was facing the soundboard, and he started to move the sliders and stuff on me. Good thing the service was already over, but might as well train them while they're young. That was fun. All right, let's see. Yeah, I would have thought plain our IEMs would be fragile too. Maybe the IEMs are more durable than the headphones. I don't know. Interesting. You doubt that the water permeated the mesh as it was super tight. Possible. Uh, Robot Glock. Place large tower speakers with integrated subs with their backs close to a wall. The wall will bounce the bass back at you. Hmm, interesting. Okay. I haven't ever had anything that's had an integrated sub built into it, so that's good to know though. Of course, I've only done bookshelf speakers, So I'm still learning when it comes to speakers. I've always heard that you pull your speakers really far out from the wall, and that it's not good to have it directly up against it. Interesting. Guess there are different ways to position, and people have different opinions on that. So that's kind of cool. Did I miss anybody's questions or comments? I don't think so. If I did, just re-ask it, please, if I did not mention it. Didn't notice. I'm sorry, Alan. Didn't notice any of the bubbles that may bring on doom. Yeah. Oh, that would be a problem for sure. I'm glad it didn't damage it. That would have been one of those moments where your heart goes up into your throat. You'd definitely be a little. Let's not do that again. For sure. Excuse me, I need a drink. No coffee today. I had it this morning, but I haven't had any this afternoon. I tend to only drink coffee in the mornings and in the evenings. I don't really drink it throughout the day. Now, if it's offered, obviously I will, but anyways, all right, let's see. I recently got a JBL soundbar 2.1. That's a sound. Whoops. Just got a notification on top of everything. Get out of here. There we go. I recently got a JBL soundbar 2.1. That's a soundbar with a sub. I also found the sub performed better with a wall beside it. I have a Klipsch 2.1. I don't remember which model. It's one of the newer ones, and it has a wireless sub. And I've noticed the same. It's a downfiring sub, and if I put the sub up against like we have our TV and stuff mounted, well not mounted, on sitting on top of a like a big case. If I put the sub directly up against that case, I get a little bit better bass. Whereas if I set the bass to the side a little bit, it doesn't quite disperse as well, the bass. Do you use or recommend any Bluetooth sets or strictly wired? I'm pretty much a wired guy only. The only wireless stuff that I will kind of use is for like super portable use. And then even then, it doesn't bother me to have a wire. So like if I was going around walking in the neighborhood, and like true wirelesses would be what most people would use. I'm really could care less. I'll just have a wire. Um, to me, I just have never gotten good performance out of Bluetooth, and I'd rather just have to get my phone out and pause music or whatever. And I don't really get very many phone calls. Believe it or not, people don't want to talk to me. But anyways, I don't get a whole lot of phone calls while I'm out and about. So, and if I do, I'll just unplug my headphone and just talk. Um, so I don't even use inline microphones. Call me old fashioned, but that's just kind of the way I am. Um, Welcome to the only honest audiophile Depper. Thank you for becoming a member. Do greatly appreciate that. Let's see here. Born Not to Run. Are the Moondrop planars real or just speculation? Feels like with all the news of affordable Iems, Moondrop is falling behind. Well, Moondrop, I believe, has a planar headphone announced. Uh, Planar IEM, I don't know if I've heard of that. I guess that would be speculation. Moondrop does take a long time to do research and development, so it could just be that their R&D is taking a while. And I'd rather it be that way because usually when Moondrop releases something, it's done right. So hopefully, if they do join the planar game, it'll be done right and it'll sound good. So, uh, be interesting. You don't drink coffee after midday because of the caffeine half life. Yeah, I understand that totally. Um, I I don't drink coffee right before I go to bed. My mom used to be able to do that. She, oh man, I'm going to bed at 10:30 and it's 10:15. I'm gonna have a cup of coffee, and she just drink it. But for me, it has to be like early evening, mid evening. I tend to be somewhat of a night owl because I work third shift forever. So I'll, as long as it's a couple hours before I'm actually going to bed, I don't have a problem with that. Um, I definitely need it in the morning. You're startled when you get a call because you don't expect any calls. Yeah, that's the way I am. I'm like, wait, what is that noise? Is my phone ringing? I don't even recognize my phone's ringtone half the time. To make your speakers sound the best, place them as far away from the wife as possible. Kirk Emerson, that's really good advice right there, actually. Let's see. uh, that's why my speakers are in my office. That's why I only use bookshelves. That's funny. Any other questions here? Any comments? And I do find the speaker world is unique with like various ways that people set things up with speakers. And then like you'll get some people that will say a 2.1 system is really good, and then others will be like, oh, you have to have 3.1, or you have to have 3.2, you have to have 5.1, 5.2, 7.1, 7.2, 9.2, 9.3, and this and that, and you have to do all these other things. And it's really interesting how they're how they like everyone thinks that they have a different way of setting it up, but ultimately they're all going after the same thing pretty much. Kind of like headphones and Iems are in the same way. And it's just interesting how we all have an opinion, and you can learn from each one of them and gather thoughts and then form your own. I really like that about audio. I think it's just the coolest thing. If I just wish that in the audio community itself, a lot of times it seems like we tend to be a little closed minded instead of being open minded and trying out other ideas and listening to other people's opinions. It's always about, nope, it's got to be this way only. And we tend to be a little closed minded. We need to be a little more open to seeing the other side. Let's see. Speaking of night owls, I have the Opus number 11, which I need to replace. Opus number 11, is that a DAP? Not sure what the Opus number 11 is. Um, Looking for something with the same sound signature used mainly listening to Tidal and UAPP app and Hi-Fi Min 400 eyes. Is there anything you could suggest based on the above? Thanks to your videos. Okay, so it's a bit deck. I've never heard it. So, True Bit deck. I've never heard it. 400 eyes, pretty balanced with a little bit of bass. Um, you looking for like a DAP or are you looking for a desktop? That would be my first question, I guess. All right, Depper. I'm interested in headphones and IEMs because I don't own any place right now. Once I get my own, I'm definitely researching speakers. This hobby will keep me broke. Yeah, there's a lot of rabbit holes, and it seems like every single rabbit hole ends at a bank account. So yeah, I totally understand that. Shanling M6 lineup of DAPs. Haven't heard. Um, sorry, it's 2016. Yeah, portable DAC, but I listen only from home. Okay, so for that, not sure what the price tag was on the Opus. I think they were fairly pricey. Um, I would go with something from Sony personally. I prefer Sony DAPs. And the reason being is you can either run them in bit perfect, or you can use all kinds of other enhancements that they include to kind of tweak your sound. And they have pretty decent power. Um, and if you need more power out of it, they're balanced. You could always get an external amplifier, something like a Topping NX7. So I would start with the Sony WM's series. Um, or you could also go, I haven't heard it, but there's one that's a little lower than that. That's supposed to be really good as well. But I would definitely look at Sony. But sorry, I'm kind of limited in that area. Okay, so typically the best placement for a sub is in a corner, two walls better than one. Interesting. Now, is that for front firing and down firing? What if it's like one of those weird side firing or back firing ones? There's all kinds of subs out there. Does that depend on the type of sub it is, or does that not really matter? Um, $200. Okay, so for 200, I would be. You can get a cheaper Sony for the 200. You can get an A105 like I have, but that doesn't have balanced out. Um, Probably you would have to go with external amp for that to power your 400s. As far as the others, I don't have any experience with anything in that price point as far as a DAP. Okay, let's see here. Alan, I don't know how I could love the Moondrop headphones if they have the animes all over them. Here's hoping for a restraint. Oh, thankfully with Moondrop, the anime stuff's only on the box, so once you open it, you can just put the box out of your eyesight. Um, I understand that. I don't really care for the anime stuff on any of the other Iems makers besides Moondrop. The one nice thing was the ones I reviewed last week, which are the airships, and they actually they have animation on the box, but it's not your typical type, and it's a little more playful, a little more cartoonish. I prefer that, truthfully, versus Moondrop with their Kato, or Moondrop with any of them. So I totally understand where you come from there, Alan. But just put the box out of sight. You don't have to worry about it. It's not. They don't put it on the actual shells and stuff. Let's see. Night Owl, you're welcome. Hopefully that helps and points you in the right direction. I wish I had a little bit more experience in that for you. But sorry, you found one of my weak links. On the tier list says located at the top of the chat. There is a link to my tier list. There's a couple DAPs listed in there. Maybe you can go and look through that. But all right, let's see. Yes, I have the WM1A, and they're selling it downgraded to the ZX300. Yeah, the ZX300. That was the one I was thinking of. That's the lower one of the Sony's. It's good, but the power is really an issue to me. So looking for okay. So the power is it not as good as the WM1A, or is it better on the ZX 300 with a lot? Oh, okay. So it has a lot of power. Okay. So the Dusk has engraved. Well, that's not a direct Moondrop. That is a collab, so that could be why it has that. You were wincing when a friend let you try them. Well, thankfully, when they're in your ears, you don't actually see it, I guess. But I understand the discomfort. I really do. I'm very much. I just prefer more plain Jane type stuff. Always have in life as in general. So I I can understand. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, ideas, um, impressions about subwoofer placement or speaker placement overall? Be interesting. I really do want to explore that a little bit more, and and learn some more. All right, R Deep, you tried Ducato as he praised it so much. The Alina is better by far. In technicalities, Alina just sweeps the floor. Well, I disagree, but again, keep in mind that the Alina I reviewed was not modded. So if you heard a modded version of the Alina, it's very possible that it does, but I cannot comment to that as I heard a unmodded Alina. So that's where I'm going to leave that. I'm glad that you like it. All right, so let's see, Marlon. For me, I cannot really differentiate, but the ZX300 is more neutral, which is good for me. Kind of hassle for me to have an external amp, but still trying to consider the Griffin to use in DAC mode instead. Okay, that's interesting. So you think the ZX300 is more neutral? Um, hmm, I haven't heard it, so cool. That's good to know. All right, let's see. Marshall D. Teach. I need a small DAP. Do you think the Sony 10 A105 makes sense in 2022? I do actually. It streams, so it's got Wi-Fi. You can, if you use any of the streaming services like Qobuz, Tidal, Amazon, anything like that, you can download it right straight through from the Android store. If you download your music, you can put in SD cards into it, and it has enough power for the smaller size Iems and something portable. Works very well for like offices and that type of thing, or going around neighborhoods, things like that. Battery life is fairly good. If I've never ran out of battery, but I do charge it after every use. Um, I'm pretty sure that I've got about 10 hours straight playing, if I remember correctly. Was probably somewhere between 8 and 10 hours. It makes a whole day's playing music. Now, if you're streaming and doing other things along with it, your battery will go faster. But yeah, I think the A105 is still valid in this time for that price tag. Let's see here. Okay, Argan, I'm not going to argue the point. So you can either just drop your comment or I'm going to ignore it. I was thinking in buying a budget headphone to about $120, which is better, the M40X or the K371. Is there other options? Between the K371 and the M40X, I would take the M40. If you're going to do any sort of like podcasting, monitoring, or that type of thing. But if you are going to just listen to music and you want a good fun can to K371, but truthfully, I would just go with the NTH 100 from Rode, which is $150, as that is the more neutral and natural sound and better than both of those in technicalities, and works as a monitor plus also as a good fun can. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? I was thinking of buying I already read that question. Thank you. Or sometimes as a doing a live stream, you come across some thoughts and comments in the chat that can be a little uh, aggressive. And I'm just going to say this, and I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm not saying this to be mean or anything of the sort. But please be respectful. And if I ask you in the chat not to say something or do something, please adhere it, or else you're going to be removed. And so please just be respectful. If I make a point and you make a point and we disagree, so be it. We disagree, and let's move on. Let's be gentlemen about it. And let's just respect each other's opinions and agree to disagree. Don't try arguing your point and convincing other people that your point is correct and that mine is wrong, because it's my live stream, not yours. All right. Afternoon, all. I'm looking for a portable USB DAC amp to take with my laptop, something that can drive headphones like the Sennheiser 600s. Any ideas? A portable, if you don't really care a whole lot about like getting the optimal performance, you could go with something simple like a Megatron, and run it balanced. If you want more optimal, let's see, depending on your price tag, you could go with. There was also a Lav Audio that did pretty good with the 600s. Trying to remember the model number of that. Oh yeah, the DS400 that was like $150. Um, you could, let's see, what's another one that you could do? Hi-Fi Hip DAC doesn't play with all. At least it didn't for me. Didn't play with all phones and computers though. Um, and then if you have more money, you want to spend a little bit more chunk, you could do something like a micro ISD black label or the signature micro ISD signature. Um, those are about the only ones that come to mind for me. Anybody else has some suggestions? Go ahead and drop them in. All right, let's see. It's hard to listen to classical music when the world prefers hard beats. I hope that the M40X would be good for that. M40X will be all right for classical. I believe that the Rode NTH 100 sound better for classical. M40Xs are better for like rock music. Let's see. I have a Bassplay P3000 lossless portable audio player that I bought about 5 years ago. I've never even heard of that. Still pumps quality audio. Whatever happened to Bassplay? It was under $100 for a quality flat cable audio player. I've never even heard of Bassplay. I don't know if it's one of those companies that got sold on Amazon and then they changed names and became something else. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Random question: headphones or IEMs? I do lean headphone, but I use IEMs quite a bit. Plus, I review more IEMs than I do headphones. But if it was my choice, I would go headphone. Kirk, I'm old and have a dual 12-inch down firing sub in a push pull configuration. Old MK. Awesome. Sounds really cool. Okay. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on HE400 SE? Kind of leaning to buy it also, but now, whoops, it flipped on me. But now I have a Deva Pro. 400 SE. Actually, I do have one in house right now to review. I would stick with the Deva Pro. I think the Deva Pro has better sound to it. The Deva Pro has better technicalities. 400 SE, in my opinion, is a little bit light and lean sounding and doesn't. It kind of lacks note weight and density. I think the Deva Pro is a little bit of the better all arounder for that price point. Corner placement for any configured sub. It's about the sound wave subs produce and how it acts more than the arrangement and type. Okay, interesting. Because for me, I have my speakers up top here, and then right down below me, I just have a subwoofer, and it's pretty much it's like 6 inches away from the wall, and it is a front firing 8 inch. Have you? Let's see. Buddha Coom07. Hi there. Have you had any issues with the locking mechanism for the Rode NTH 100s? No. I left it on lock and the plastics broke after 3 weeks while I left them in the bag, and you had to do an RMA. Yeah, I've had no issues whatsoever with that. Sorry to hear that. Hopefully Rode took care of it. They're usually really good with warranties. Um, so that's a bummer that you had that issue. I haven't heard too many people have had that. Maybe it was just a one-off problem. Sorry that you had that issue. Let's see. All right, John, thank you for your opinion. I'm just going to leave it at that. Thanks for your suggestion. I've made some notes and we'll check them all out. Thank you, Just Poo. We will definitely keep that. Look forward to hearing your impressions later on. Do I find more powerful dongles have an advantage over lower powered ones, even with sensitive IEMs? Excuse me. Do you find more powerful dongles have an advantage over lower powered ones, even with sensitive IEMs? Yes. Actually, I do. I find that now you do have to be careful. Sometimes some things are just too sensitive, and you will mess around with the sonics. You'll get some hissing and things like that. So more power doesn't always equal better, but with dongles, I do find that sometimes a little bit more current, a little bit more power does help the overall presentation. You're very welcome, Marion. Hopefully, or Marlon, hopefully it helps. Let's see, Mike. I'm looking into getting the HiFiMan Aria Stealth. Could you recommend a replacement cable that has a balanced 4-pin connector that goes into an amp? Apos makes a very nice cable now. It is a little pricey. There are several others that are out. You can get Periapt Audio, also makes a very nice cable. John, you're very welcome for replying. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns, anything of the sort? We're all caught up. Anybody else? Everybody's nice and quiet today. It's a Sunday afternoon. Just think, in a couple of weeks, the NFL will be starting up, and we'll all be busy watching football. At least I will be. All right, let's see. Do you think that the Sundara is still a niche sound, or is it cannibalized by the Edition XS? I've heard rumblings of them making a closed Sundara. Well, the rumblings about the closed Sundara are real. Haven't heard an XS, and I believe the Sundara is one of the best values of a headphone. So I don't really think it's a niche. You just, if you want to consider it niche, I guess, because it needs more power. But yeah, it's a very good headphone. If you watch my Sundara review, you'd probably think, man, he didn't really like it too much. But over time, I really turned to loving the Sundara, and now I recommend it all the time. In fact, it stays here on my desk and is used as a reference piece. And Mike, you're welcome for the recommendations. Hopefully they help. You feel the Stax L300 doesn't perform well after keeping it unused for a few weeks. Is it dust or could it be? Um, well, I'm not much of a Stax person. Unfortunately, I just don't have the experience with them. I do hear that from other users of Stax that they like to be exercised, and that you have to stretch their legs, so to speak. And so it could be a little bit of that. But also, I find that other headphones interact that way as well. And sometimes things are like, well, I don't really care for this. And then after a month, you put them in your ears and you're like, wow, I really like this. Could just be a moment. So it kind of depends. But I do think that gear does need to be exercised and ran. on a intermittent basis. Even if you don't use it very regularly, you should just let it play for a little bit. Keep things fresh. Let's see. Hey, you're welcome there, Buddha Kun 07. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Let's see. Balance cables for the Sundara depends on your amp. Not necessary, but always a welcome. Does it can do some positives depending on your amplifier. Let's see. Never spent more than $400 on full size headphones, but around $180 for Iems for me. Just give me so much more details and clarity than similar priced headphones. Huge advantage. My opinions. I can understand that. I do think that there's a bigger stepping stone for headphones to take that leap, whereas with Iems, you can kind of get to that leap a little sooner. So I can understand where you're leaning there. Do you have plans to review the Tri HBB Kai? Or K, I think it's Kai. If one's provided, or if the funds become available. I haven't been reached out about obtaining one at this time. It's already 3 a.m. in the Philippines. Whew. It's only 3 p.m. here on Sunday, and you're already into Monday. That's craziness. While have you, do you tend to equalize your headphones or Iems, even if it's just a bump? No, I don't tend to use EQ. In fact, I was just thinking about this today, but the only place that I use EQ is when I'm at church running the soundboard. Rarely ever do I use EQ at home. There's stacks are sensitive to dust. Okay, that's good to know, Alan. S12 is much more revealing than 400i on the 789. I can understand that. The 400i is good for its price point, but it's not really that good of detail retrieval and resolution. S12 is phenomenal, and the 789 would really bring that out on the S12, I would think. Ashred, you're welcome. Is stacks. Every showroom has them in glass bird cages. I believe it. Is that along with the Spem? I don't know if you heard about that, but I saw some news story about Spam being stolen out of some stores, and so they're putting them in these little lock cases so people can't walk off with a can of Spam. I don't know why you would steal Spam. There's better tasting food, but anyways, let's see. Just bought an LCD X21, and I'm using a Ship Magni Heresy with a Muddy SE. I will be upgrading my amp DAC, yield better performance sonically, more than likely. I have not heard the Modi SE. I have heard the Heresy. Now, the Heresy does tend to be slightly on the warmer side. It's a very nice amp. I really do enjoy it, but it does round and smooth things just a little bit, and it's a little bit on the warm side. The Modi SE, as I said, I haven't heard, but definitely upgrading can change sonics. There can be differences, so just depends on what you go for going forward. Can definitely yield a better performance. 21s are very revealing. LCDX 21s are very revealing headphone, and do show differences in DACs and amps, in my opinion. Any other questions, comments to come through this afternoon? Got pretty good conversations going on here today. Nothing else? Come on, somebody's got some questions. We got 22 people in here. There's at least one question rattling around in there. So today I was sitting in front of the my soundboard, which is a Allen and Heath QU24, and we had some different speakers the past couple of weeks. So we had our assistant pastor was preaching today, and he came on, and he's kind of got a deeper voice to begin with, and he was like really down deep, like really deep and just like super thick and muddy. And so I had to go in there and tweak the EQ and get it so it sounded more natural and correct. And it got me thinking about how that's like the only time that I ever use EQ. I don't even use it at home. Now, I will say this though: there is a review coming soon of this little device, and that is a Lav Audio DS300 um, speaker amp, and it's got tone controls, and that'll be interesting because that's something that I don't really use too often either. So, all right, let's see. I have the Meze Empyrean and just got the Focal Utopia. Well, congratulations. What amp deck combo would you recommend, or an amp? Um, I I actually really enjoy the Empyrean on the Mytek Liberty DAC 2 and the Head Amp GSX Mini. The Mytek Liberty DAC 2's headphone out can work with the Empyrean, and it probably would work with the Utopia. I've never had a Utopia in house, but have heard of Utopia. Um, but those would probably be the pairing that I would recommend. Let's see. A lot of music engineers and producers use Focal speakers at home for studio and bookshelves. Interesting. I've only heard Focal speakers briefly at audio shows. I've never really had them here in house. And I honestly don't remember a whole lot about them. Tommy, you're very welcome. Enjoy the Focal Utopia and Meze Empyrean. I'm jealous. Let's see. What upgrade would you recommend from the Tin Hi-Fi T3 Plus? Warm sound signature is preferred. There's a couple options. You could go Thea Audio Elixir. You could also, if you wanted to stay in dynamic range, dynamic driver, excuse me, Thea Audio Elixir, the Kato, but the Kato isn't quite as warm. Um, so the Elixir is the more warm one there. If you want to try planar, you could go P1 Max from Tin Hi-Fi. If you want something a little totally different sound but still warm and bassy, you could go with the T5. Um, if you want a little bit more vocals with some bass, you could do new Titan S. Um, a lot of options when it comes to upgrading the T3 Plus, which is a very good IEM on its own. Let's see. I'm looking at a Burson Conductor 3X for an amp. I just have no idea what to get. My budget is around $700 or $800. Okay, Burson Conductor 3X. That's a very good amp. I'm trying to think, $700-800 for amplifiers. That's that's a toughie. There's not a whole lot of choices I have heard in that price point. And the amps that I have heard in that price point, I really wouldn't go for. Honestly, about the only amps that I recommend going up to that price point would be like the Drop THX 789 and the one linear, and a few other minor ones in there. Um, of course, you could go higher. You could go with the head amp GSX Mini, um, or an RME, um, or an SPL monitor, but you're beyond your budget there. So sorry, I'm kind of don't really have a recommendation at that price point for just a standard amplifier. If you went DAC amp, you might be able to, if you don't mind having an integrated, you can go with, if you want a little bit warmer of a sound, you can go with a micro IDSD signature or a Neo, but you're not going to have quite the power of the Burson. So yeah, that's a tough question. With the truthfully, I would just go with the conductor. Probably would be the way I would lean. All right, let's see. All right, let's see here. A shit stack would be another option that you could go with. But again, I don't have a whole lot of experience and to recommend those. I've heard a lot of stuff at all your shows, but as far as actually hearing them and comparing them right here, I don't have that. All right, let's see here. I'm impressed with the S12. Saving to try the Rapco Hook X. Planar driver is fast. Not sure a dynamic driver at similar pricing can compete in sense of speed. You might be surprised. Some of those dynamics are really good, especially in that price point. Now they're gonna have a few little differences, but some of those dynamics are pretty impressive for what they provide. Tommy, you're very welcome. Are the units in the screen mostly from your own wallet, or are there review units? That's a good question. All right, so we'll point them out. The speakers, the Martin Logan's Motion 15s, paid for out of my own wallet. Sennheiser HD 8XX, paid out of my own wallet. Headamp GSX Mini, paid out of my own wallet. Mytek Liberty DAC 2, paid out of my own wallet. Drop THX 1 Linear, paid out of my own wallet. If you can't really see it too well down here, the Odyssey Deckard, that's paid out of my own wallet. The two SMSLs that are next to the Odyssey, those are on loan. This one Little Bear switcher box, paid out of my own wallet. The Gustard U12 that's underneath it, that's paid out of my own wallet. Iems, we won't cover those. The Cost KPH 40Is, those are paid out of my own wallet. Civica SVO 21s, those were loaned. ESS 252s, those were out of my own wallet. Harmonic Dyne G200s, those are loaned from Linsol. Sundaris, those are provided by Hi-Fi Man. Sennheiser 580s, those are bought. Meze 99 Classics, those were provided. AKG K275s, those were bought. The Superlux HD 681s, those were bought. Blue Lolas, those were bought. Rode NTH 100s, those were bought. Up top, even though the camera screen is a little, here, let me see if I can raise it up. There we go. We'll fix it. I'll just say LCD2 Classics, those are purchased. Hi-Fi Man and Ananda, those were provided by Hi-Fi Man. Aria Stealth, those were provided by Hi-Fi Man. Mr. Speakers Ether C's, those were bought. Sennheiser HD 600s, those were purchased. And Tor Audio Roger, which is, got to come back down. Tor Audio Roger, which is a tube amp, that was purchased. Aune X1S, that was loaned. Shit Audio Vidar, that is purchased. Audio Technica R70X, that was purchased. And then the Sennheiser HD 660S, that was purchased. And then down below, got to show these off every time that someone asks about my gear. then the prettiest headphones in my collection, the Rawson Rad Zeros, those were purchased. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's see. Whoops, sorry. They bumped the microphone there. What would you recommend as a upgrade from the Meze 99 Classics? Unfortunately, there is too much of a cost difference between the Meze 99s and their next headphone. Yeah, the Lyric is a little bit up there in cost. If you're looking for a similar sound, you could go with like a T60 Argon from Mod House. Something along those lines would probably be good if you're looking for a closed back. If you want to pay a little bit more, you could go with like an Odyssey LCD2 closed, which come in at $700, I believe. If you want to go down in price, you go with the Rode NTH 100. Okay, I would recommend the Singer SA1 or the Lake Peoples Vioelectric V200. V200 is an interesting amp, lots of power. Nice Class A. Have not heard the Singer SA1. The LCD X21 headphone or the Aria Stealth. I have not heard the headphone. I want to hear it. Depending on what you prioritize. If you like a very immersive soundstage, nice and wide, good depth and layering, really good detail retrieval resolution, and a little bit bolder in your face, I would go with the Aria Stealth. If you want something that's a little bit more neutral and a little more balanced and cohesive, I would go with the LCDX. You're very welcome, John, for the time. Thank you for swinging by. You're very welcome, Stephen. Let's see. You have a pair of Martin Logan Accent 1 drivens with a Krell Cav 250. Very nice, Kirk. Very nice. Yeah, I like Martin Logans. I was real. They were kind of a blind buy for me. I had never heard of Martin Logan before. People had talked about them and recommended them to me, but I had never heard one. And I was looking kind of for an upgrade from like the Wharfdales and something a little different from the Sonys. And I kind of wanted a ribbon headphone because my powered speakers, the Monoprice MM5Rs, are ribbon, and I kind of like the way that they portray things. And so I was just like, oh, okay, I'll try the Motion 15s, and very pleasantly surprised. Truly love them. You snuck this stream on while I was working. You work on Sundays. That's fine. I mean, you have to pay the bills. I understand. Glad that you could come by, Paul. I bet you it's hard to clean when it gets a little dusty. Yeah, I I do try to move them and use gear at least once a week. I used to try to use it every day, and then that's just impossible to do anymore with this much gear. So I do tend to clean the gear quite a bit, try to keep things out. Doesn't help when you have a cat that is long haired like Opie, and he's shedding like crazy. But yeah, it can be kind of hard to clean. Do you use any of those aftermarket low noise power supplies for your gear? IFI sells a few, range from $100 to $300. I wonder if they make a difference. Um, no, not really. I've tried a couple on random occasions. Um, like I had originally way back in the day, I had the original topping D30 and A30 version ones, and it included some sort of power supply for it, external power supply. Did I notice a difference? Honestly, I don't really remember. I think I did a video on it way back when the first channel first started. Other power supplies I haven't really tried. I have used some power conditioners. IFI sent me one of those, which was a $600 power plant thing. Did I hear a difference? Maybe. Was it me imagining things, maybe. And the problem with it is by the time you listen to everything with your current one and then you unplug everything, you plug in that and you plug all your gear back in and you start listening again, you may or may not totally remember how it sounded. So yeah, I really haven't noticed a major difference. Sorry. Let's see. That really helped a lot. Most people tell me the LCDX21 is so efficient that it doesn't matter what the audio chain is. So I was under the impression LCDX21 might not scale well. I think the 21 scales really well. Um, in fact, I think that a lot of times gear can scale. Some stuff really doesn't, and it's, in my experience, it tends to be the cheaper, lower quality gear that doesn't scale as well. I find that when things are built well and are made of quality components, when paired with better quality components, they do scale better. That's just kind of been my experience. That goes for IEMs and headphones. All right, so let's real quick since we did the headphone thing, I will talk about IEMs. If you watch a review about IEMs and what gear is purchased or not, I always mention that. So if I thank somebody for providing it, it's either loaned or given to the channel. If it comes from Linsol, Hi-Fi Go, Keep Hi-Fi, channels like that, I get to keep it. If it comes from a manufacturer directly, normally I have to return it. And if it comes from somebody, like a person directly, I have to return it. Unless they specifically tell me I can keep it. Like I've had a couple times where people have just said, I don't want this thing, you can keep it, do whatever you want with it. But for the most part, um, most things I mention it. If I don't mention who sent it, it means I purchased it. So for IEMs that I've purchased just off the top of my head, like the CTM DaVinci 10s, the Fearless Audio Roland, those were purchased. Meze Ray Penta, that was purchased. Things like that. I do own those, just to clarify. So that's how you'll know if you watch a review. If I don't mention anybody or thank anybody for providing it, then I purchased it. Do you listen to records or vinyl? It looks so impractical, but so many people have them now. I'm not really a vinyl records type of person. I have heard them. It is a very interesting and unique listening experience. And if I had the room and I had the space for it, and be able to get the setup, I would love to do it, just to try it. But unfortunately, at this time, it's just not feasible. Let's see. Being your GSX Mini has a custom discrete power supply, and then the new Liberty 2 has the new linear Toriold, I get why you wouldn't have any extra power supplies to boost. Yeah, exactly. I don't see a need for it, and honestly, I honestly haven't heard differences in the limited times I've heard them. Not saying it couldn't make a difference, but it just hasn't really mattered to me. Depends. Okay, let's see. Talking about vinyl. Depending on the pressing, pop music albums from before 2000 approximately were cheaply produced. If you get higher quality vinyl, it's noticeably better. Interesting. That's interesting to know. Let's see. Your thoughts on R2R versus multi-bit. I'm also really not sure if those are the same or different. And have you listened to R2Rs? Yes, I've listened to both. I've listened to R2R and multi-bit. In fact, I had them side by side when I did my reviews of the Solcris Deck 1421 and the Shit Audio by Frost 2. And very, very similar. They are, you truthfully probably couldn't tell a difference between which one was which. You knew that they were in the same vein. as I said in the review, I kind of tended to lean towards the Bifrost just a little bit. But yeah, they're both extremely good. And you're, I'm thinking, now I'm limited. I haven't heard a ton of R2R stuff, but I have heard those. I would think that if they all perform similar like that, you're gonna have a really hard time differentiating between the two. Sorry, my voice is starting to crack here. By the way, if you use soda can, anything of the or something of that size beverage, these little Yeti ones are really, really helpful. So you unscrew the little lid, and then your can just fits right in, and it'll keep it cold for hours on end. You won't go to room temperature. So I know Yeti's expensive, but I highly recommend it. All right, let's see here. Bifrost looks incredible. Shit in general looks as if it's always the best gear in the budget options. To my understanding, even my shit Magni Heresy measures just as well as Asgard's. Yeah, I mean, shouty does a really good job of packing in a lot of functionality and sonics into a price that is value. They give you what's important, and that's what I respect about shit audio is it's about the enjoyment of music and about the sonic pleasures and the overall performance rather than getting all these extra things that half of the users will never use. Is the Meze Empyrean still your daily driver? It is not. My daily headphone is the Rawson Audio Rad Zero, which, since it got mentioned, we have to show it off again. um, the Rad Zero has unseated the Meze, and my Meze actually has been sold. Not that I don't enjoy it, not that I don't recommend it, because I truly do. It's just it wasn't getting the listening time as the Rawson Red Zero does. But yeah, these they're heavy. Um, that is one thing that the Empyrean does have over it is weight. But they are comfortable. But you look like a doofus when you have them on because they're massive. But extremely comfortable. Um, once you get used to the weight. $2,600 headphone if you can even buy them. The wait list, yeah, they do take a while. You can get them on B stock, and you don't have a wait list for them, but then you don't have the choice of what you want to do for custom cup. Um, but I did buy these. Somebody had asked earlier what gear I had purchased. So that is an interesting question that came up. A lot of times you don't know what gear has been given to a reviewer and what gear has been, they purchased. And I think it's important to know what they purchase and use as a reference. And the gear that I've purchased is used as a reference for the most part. Um, so there's only a couple of items that have been provided that have stuck around as reference gear, like the Sundara, the Aria Stealth, are two that I didn't purchase that are used as a reference. What makes you prefer them compared to the Empyrean? The Rad Zero, in my opinion, is more neutral and more natural. Overall in its presentation, the Empyrean is a little bit more leaning towards fun and isn't as technical. So the Rad Zero has better detail retrieval and resolution, and also is more cohesive and balanced throughout its frequency. To me, the Rad Zero is the best reproduction of tone and timbre of a headphone that I've heard, that I can afford. But I really do like the Empyrean too. The Empyrean is more of the sit back, relax, and chill, and just enjoy and just kind of zone out in your music. Whereas the Rad Zero is the workout horse and is the more neutral, professional sound, and that's what I'm seeking. So that's why I went with it. Hopefully, Vargas, that explain that answer your question there. So a few more moments here on the stream. We can go for a little bit longer if you got more questions. Uh, how do you sell your used gear online, locally, or both? I've always sold it online. Headfi, I did a little bit, but most of my stuff is sold on eBay. Hey, you're very welcome, Vargas. I'm glad that you're able to understand that rambling there. I've sold a few things locally to friends, but I've never actually sold it to like somebody that I didn't know locally. But most of my sales have always been through eBay. In your opinion, in what price range do you think you start to hit the law of diminishing returns in headphones and audio gear in general? Would love to hear your take on it. Okay, so let's start with IEMs. So with IEMs, I think that where you really start to get into the diminishing returns is about $1,000. You can hear differences, and I think there's a couple different tiers to it. So like about $100 and less, you got the value. Wow, these are actually really good. And then you got about $300 to $500. You see a big significant step up from that lower end stuff, and then you kind of have a lull, and then you get to $1,000, and then after $1,000, it starts to become a little bit more about design, technic, technical drivers and that type of stuff, and just overall the experience. And so with like $1,000 and stuff, you don't you start to really see less enhancing steps up, whereas you start seeing more like coolness factor. Headphones. Headphones are a little different. I think you have to get to about the $300 point before you really start to see another step up. So for $300, you got Sundara and stuff like that. Then it goes to about the 750 to $1,000 range. You really see some vast improvements and some significant differences. And then you go from about 1,000 to about $2,500. You've got another step up, another tier up. After that, you start getting into the elites, and you can get some significant differences, but it's not as much. Again, it's kind of like the headphone, the IEM thing, where you get into this is more as a special sauce type stuff. Amps and DACs are totally different. I think you can go from about $300 and less. You're in the budget world of amps and DACs, and you get really good solid performance. And then from about 500 to about $1,000 is where you see the significant differences. And then when you start going beyond that, you get all the special stuff. And yeah, you can get some exceptionally different performances, but it's so minuscule. And I think DACs and amps is where you really see the least amount of improvement. Speakers, totally different. So you got the budget world, but the problem with speakers is the budget world is like massive. So you got like $500 and less is pretty much speaker budget. And then you get from about 500 to about a couple $1,000, and you've got this kind of next step, and then it just grows. Speakers are a totally different world, in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm just somebody who hasn't experienced all that yet, but that's just my thoughts. All right, let's see. That's a good question. You need to sell some of your older gear. So do I. um, did you get your hands on an Atrium or a new Aeolus? No, I haven't heard anything from ZMF in a long time. Wish I had. If you got one that you would like to loan, I'd appreciate it. All right, let's see. Really like vocals on Sennheiser 6XXs. Have you heard headphones with better vocal? That's see, and that's the thing with Sennheiser is they kind of have that niche, area. Um, and with that, you kind of have to look at the overall experience, so to speak. Um, the only headphones that I've heard that have vocals that really jump out at me are from like Meze. I actually like Audio's vocal presentation on a lot of their gear, and Dan Clark. Those three do speakers really well, or vocals really well. ZMF does vocals really well as well, also. But are they on the same tier as a Sennheiser 650, 600 series? Kind of depends. But those would be kind of the four manufacturers I'd look at when it comes to headphones for vocals. Let's see. Basically, buy the best quality IEMs and headphone your budget allows. Absolutely. You know, this I'm gonna try to find the unicorn, and I'm gonna just buy everything. Why not do your research and save your money and buy one that you believe is the unicorn of them all? Because in a lot of times, when you find the one that you really like and feel like is your best, you've already spent all this money, and you could have just saved yourself a whole bunch by buying one quality one. That's my thought. Most high end is all about diminishing returns. Found very small variances when it went from $500 speaker cables to $1,500 cable. Yeah, cables is another one. Now, is there a difference between more expensive cable versus the cheapy, $5 Walmart uh, stuff? Yes. Do you hear differences? Yes, I believe you can. Do you hear it in every single one of them? Probably not. But there are differences, even in quality, build, things like that. And a lot of times with cables, whether it be a speaker cable, power cable, IEM cable, headphone cable, whatever it is, I'm usually buying it for aesthetics, also for durability, things like that. And I do take into consideration, like, overall, is this a copper cable, gold cable, silver cable, whatever. Do I care if it's been frozen, cryo frozen, whatever, for 500 years before, whatever, who cares? That really doesn't matter to me. um, I'm looking for performance and overall look and feel of it and durability and last. Somebody asked me in the comments what brands I recommend. World's Best cables, WBCs, I really like a lot. Also, I like Gear speaker cables. Those are actually pretty good for a little bit cheaper. Those are the two that come to mind right now. But World's Best is about the ones that I use. Why? Because it's the world's best. Any question about it? Let's see. Auteurs are better for vocals. Maybe they hold their own over the Verite Open. It's been a long time since I heard either one of those. I would probably lean towards that agreement, but I can't say that with 100% positivity because I honestly don't remember both of them. It's been several years since I heard ZMF. Amp differences I find is a headroom rating. Yeah, especially in speakers and headphones. IEM's a little different, but you definitely can get a like the power and the ability that it presents and overall builds out your staging with imaging, layering, and stuff like that. Um, is where a lot of times amplifiers will excel over each other. Also, kind of depending on the topology of it, you might get a little bit warmer sounding or a little colder sounding type of thing. Uh, let's see. The Atticus was an interesting sound. If I remember correctly, it was more about the bass and the fun sound of things. It would probably be an interesting listen. Probably wouldn't be my first pick as an EMF. Is $200 price point a good for an IEM? How is it different to 500s and above? Depending on manufacturing, again, it does come down to implementation of the drivers and things like that. But $200 is a good spot for value. You're going to get a good amount of detail retrieval resolution for the most part. Normally, you're going to get quality tonality. Again, it does depend on the manufacturer though. But yeah, $200 is a pretty good spot. $300 is kind of in that spot of where you're above the cheaper values, not quite to the higher level, but you're in a good segment. Love the vocals on your AKG K71s more than my 650s. It's been a long time since I heard 701. If I remember correctly, 701s are a little forward, not quite as forward as a 600, and they have a little bit more space. If I remember correctly, they're a little more separated than a 600 or 650. Excuse me. Yeah, I could see that. But it's been a long time since I heard 701. Why doesn't Odyssey make headphones that are a labor to wear? Their newer stuff with the carbon headband is way lighter. They're still heavier than a lot of headphones, but their newer headband is definitely a lot better than their previous. I really do like the comfort of the newer Odysseys, and I want to hear it and I want to feel it because the LCD 5 is supposedly the most comfortable and lightest of the Odysseys. So I would be very curious about it. It's got a lot thinner of a profile too. Um, so just based on that, I would love to hear it. Yeah, when you have 50 grand in your audio system, you're not going to be putting Walmart cables. Absolutely. And if money wasn't an issue or money was, a lot bigger of a budget than what I currently have, I don't have 50,000 to spend on audio. Yeah, I wouldn't care about that as much. I wouldn't be stripping down coat hangers to connect or, whatever. Like some people do. But yeah, obviously you would invest more. And I do think even as much as it's kind of snickered at, I do think that when you have higher components and everything is higher, you do want to keep the level and the investments similar. And so like you're not going to put a $10 cable on a $20,000 speaker setup or things like that. So I totally understand where you're coming there. Let's see. I feel like the weight of the Odyssey is extremely exaggerated. Just recently got my LCD 21s coming from the Sundara. The 21 is not heavy at all. Did a 9-hour session last night. Yeah, I mean, look, my my Rad Zeros. Okay, they weigh 600 and some grams. Yes, they are heavy, especially when you compare them to something like the R70X. All right, but at the same time, they're still comfortable. And same thing with Odyssey. Yes, I I can't wear my Odysseys or a Rawson as much as and as long as I can in R70X, but I can still wear them. And so I think it kind of just depends on the person. Some people have a more tolerance to it. Also depends on your seating positions and things like that. So I mean, ZMFs are heavy as well. Some Sennheisers are actually kind of heavy, things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's differences, and I think it comes down to the user, the use case, and your listening positions and things like that. But yeah, some of them are heavier than others. I'll give you that. More industrial feel. The Odyssey makes it feel premium versus Hi-Fi and Sundara, which feels like paper cup. Sundaras do not feel as premium as a Rawson Red Zero or an Odyssey LCD 2 or an LCD 2 closed, things like that. Ether C's definitely blow them out of the water. Totally understand that. I thought monster cables were overpriced. Um, that's because monster cables are. I have used monster cables. Wasn't really impressed with them versus some of the other stuff. I always found monster cables to be like super stiff and hard to move and put in place. Is it okay to go from the Aria to the Moondrop Kato? Your budget is extremely tight. Can't afford to get Kato right now, or maybe save up and get Kato in the future. Well, I regret getting the Aria. Depends on what you're looking for sonically. Personally, I prefer the Kato over the Aria. I believe it's better defined, better resolving, better detailed, and has better tone and timbre, and is not as bassy or as aggressive in its presentation. So I believe the Kato is the better choice. But if it were me and I was seeking it and out between the two, I would wait. That's just my opinion. The $50,000 in 2007 was my divorce gift to myself. By the way, you know why divorces are so expensive? It's because they're worth it. Yeah, you said that last time. I don't know. I've been married 22 years, going on 23. And divorce has never come into to the conversation. I'm glad you're happy now. Do you think that there is an $800 increase between the Ray Solo and the Ray Penta? Um, to be honest, no. But is the Ray Penta an increase and a better IEM than the Solo? Yes. Different experience, same quality build, a little bit better build and design. Overall, sonically, you're getting a little warmer sound, better detail retrieval and resolution, and just a little bit more expansive soundstage, better depth and layering. Yes, it is a improvement of sonics on the Ray Solo. It is warmer though. You don't quite get that sparkle that you can get with the Ray Solo. Um, $800 to one person versus another value, can differ. If you can find a Ray Penta for cheaper on the used market or something, definitely would go that route. Because is it worth the 800 brand new? That's a big step, and that's coming from somebody who likes the Ray Penta and the Ray Solo. All right, I'm going to start wrapping it up. I do have something I have to do later this evening. I have to go to church later this evening, so I do need to start wrapping things up. So if you have any more questions or comments, I'll give you about 10 more minutes here. My LCD2F is pushing 700 grams with no suspension band. I haven't worn it in months. People despairingly talk about hi-fi build, but I prefer a little creaking from the band to the Odyssey girders. Sorry. Um, totally understand that. I don't have a problem with the build of the hi-fi. The thing about hi-fi to me is they just never feel as premium as some of these others. But does that really matter when it's on your head? Sonically is what matters, and I like hi-fi. So, let's see. Do the Red Zeros compare to other cans in their price range? I believe it does. At $2,500. Now, I haven't heard a ton of headphones in that price point, but from the ones that I've heard, compared to the Red Zero, I prefer the Red Zero, which is why I purchased it. I have an IFI X can. How can I assure I stay balanced all the way through? I use it with a Dragonfly Red. I'm not even sure if the X can is completely balanced all the way through, but um, using Dragonfly Red, I don't think you would be able to do balanced all the way through, anyways, because you'd have USB in to your Dragonfly or Dragonfly's USB, and then you'd have 3.5 out, and you have to go 3.5 out to some sort of cable that goes to 4.4 into your X can, and then you could do your balanced out from the X can, but it wouldn't be true balanced straight from the Dragonfly. Um, Keith, you're welcome. What would you say Class A amps inherently have an advantage over Class AB? No, not necessarily. I think that it depends on what use case you're using it for. Class A is power all the time, whereas Class AB is power when you need it. And it depends on what you're trying to drive. Personally, I would prefer AB. Um, that way I'm not, oh, I can use it with more stuff. That's kind of the way I look at it. Thanks, sir. Decided I will wait and get to Kato. Look forward to hearing your thoughts on that. I'm sure you will enjoy it. All right, so about 10 more minutes or so, and we'll start wrapping up. What's the difference with 2.5, 3.5, and 4.4? 2.5 and 4.4 are balanced, and 3.5 is single ended. Is it is it me, or does it seem like there is more depth to the sound of AB versus A? There can be. Again, I think it kind of depends on what you're driving. Because sometimes having too much power will cause things to change their sonic capabilities. Steven, you woke up. Sorry I woke you up. I didn't mean to wake you, but appreciate you swinging by. Yeah, I think that sometimes when you overpower things, you will change their sonics. Whereas if you um, have an AB amp where it kind of gives the power when it needs it, you won't alter your sonics as much, and that would affect your depth and layering. All right, so um, last call for questions, comments, and concerns for the live stream here, and we will wrap it up for this Sunday afternoon. Class A is power hunger and a warmer sound. AB is more efficient and leaner in sound. Can be. Again, I think it does depend on what you're pairing with it, but that's a pretty good way of putting it. Class A, some of the little bit older Class A's tend to have a little bit more of that warmer sound. Some of the newer Class A's I've heard that have been more recent aren't quite as warm. Could be my imagination though. All right, let's see here. Sonic differences between dynamic driver, balance armature, or planar. Yeah, there are sonic differences. They can be somewhat subtle, but for the for the most part, you're going to find that balance armatures and planars kind of similar. Um, and then dynamics tend to have a little bit better tonality and timbre, but that's not always the case. There are good in all three of them, but a lot of times your BAs and your planars will be a little bit more on the technical side of things, whereas the dynamics will be a little bit more about tone and timbre in the presentation, and you'll have a little bit more um, like impact, note weight, that type of thing. Thank you for your time, Dave. You've really helped me out with my future buying options. You're welcome. Before you leave, give us a hot take. What are three things you don't like about the audiophile community? All right, so we will end on this question. Um, I give me a moment. All right, so three things I don't like about the audio community currently: the divisiveness that is between objective and subjective. It's you have to be one or the other, and I don't agree with that. I believe that you should be able to have thinking of both ways. As I said earlier in the stream, you should be open minded to both sides of the party, and you should be able to use things on each side as tools and as ways of learning about audio, because we're all in it for the same thing, which is music ultimately. Another thing that I don't like about the audio community is that the approach to things is that you're wrong because I heard it this way. You're wrong because you do it this way, or things like that. Always being attacking instead of coming and trying to be, as I said in the previous point, a little bit more open minded and a little bit of the hey, you ever consider doing it this way? You ever hear it? Try this or that, and being the it's only this way. Um, Last thing I don't like about audiophile community. It's going to kind of go along with the other two, which is divisive about gear types and being divisive about like budgets, and looking down on people that use certain things and putting your nose up. Whether it's, oh, you use a amplifier made by this, or you use that DAC, or you believe that this is in this, instead of just going, oh, well, you know what? I'm glad that you have that experience and that you enjoy what you have. I haven't heard it, or I heard that and I didn't care for it, but I'm glad that you do. And, people need to be more open minded and thoughtful. Uh, thank, thank you for the cat hair roller. I do appreciate that. It definitely, they do get purchased quite often here. You probably noticed back of my chair here has some cat hair. And with Opie roaming around today, it has been flying. So thank you very much, Kirk. I appreciate that. Thank you for the laughs. But anyways, those are my 3 points. I'm sure there's a whole lot more. But overall, I really enjoy the community, and I enjoy every one of you that came by today, asked the tough questions, and made me think a little bit this Sunday afternoon. So do greatly appreciate everything that you have done. And I appreciate all of the support and the love that you all provide. And thank you to my YouTube members and patrons for joining us today. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of that. Also, if you are interested in becoming a YouTube member or a subscriber, patron, any of that sort, there's links down below. And we also did have a new member today. So thank you for joining, doing that. So don't forget to give a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and a thumbs down if you didn't like this chat. And I'm sorry that you didn't, but I understand. So anyways, we will do this again soon, probably sometime before the end of the month. Don't know yet, but we'll plan it out. So thank you very much for all, and we will talk at you later. You all have a good Sunday night.